Good day, I'm Jim Beagan.
And I'm Deb Blood,
Welcome to Yes We Can.
in the know about disability.
In our last show on physical therapy, our guest said that one of the goals of physical therapy was to make you safe and feel confident in your home. So, and also in the activities you had to do.
But what happens if the disability or the availability help from your loved ones or community gets to the point where you no longer can be safe and receive adequate help at home? What options do you have?
And this is something everyone should be aware of because it could easily become an issue for you or someone you love, even if it's not on your radar now.
Our guests today are going to help us understand these issues and options. Welcome to Joan MacLauchlan, the Director of Clinical Services at First Choice Community Medical Services.
And Matt Pellegrino, the Vice President of Long-Term Services and Support at the Northeast Independent Living Program.
Welcome to you both, and thank you for joining us today, Matt and Joan.
Thank you for having us.
Let's start with you briefly telling us about your organizations and your roles in them.
So who wants to start?
I'll start, I don't mind. Hi, I'm Joan MacLauchlan. I'm a licensed practical nurse, and I work for First Choice Community Medical Services, which is a traveling nurse practitioner practice that will go to homebound patients that are living in an assisted living. So we go in a big area around here, Methuen, North Andover, Lawrence, even into New Hampshire, and we see our patients there. So they don't need to travel outside to go to a doctor's office.
Now, prior to that, you had experience in the assisted care facilities.
Yes.
What was that experience?
So I was a resident care director at a local assisted living in Methuen, and what I did was I would assess our incoming residents to see what their needs were, if they needed help with their ADLs, if they all had cooking done for them, so they just had to come down to the dining room, but they might have needed help with mobility, medication management, so I would assess that and make sure that we were able to provide that for them.
Very good, thank you.
You know, my first question is...
But we haven't gotten to Matt.
Oh, Matt, I'm so sorry, Matt, most important.
Thank you. I'm the Vice President of Long-Term Services and Supports at Northeast Independent Living Program. So we're an independent living center. We work with individuals who, with all types of disabilities, so we call ourselves a cross-disability organization, who wish to remain living in the community. Our service area is Lawrence, Massachusetts. It's all over, really Northeast Massachusetts, but our main area is, I would say, Lawrence, Lowell, Haverhill area. And we are what makes us unique is we're really a peer-run, peer-directed organization. As I was telling you, Jim, 51% of our staff, or at least 51% identify as having a disability. 51% of our board identifies as having a disability. So really, we promote consumer-controlled self-direction of their services, of our consumer services. And we provide 5 core services: skills training, advocacy, which can be both individual and system-wide advocacy.
So you mean individual self-advocacy?
Could be individual advocacy, working one-on-one with someone, or system-wide, so we could go to the State House and advocate for disability rights. Also, information referral, just teaching persons, what information is out there, which is probably what we're going to talk a lot about tonight. Peer counseling, so like I said, it can be called peer support. Persons with disabilities working for NILP, working with our consumers who have disabilities. And transitions, so this is really nursing nursing facility transition to the community is one of our core services.
So how does one go about looking?
How does
When
one
they-
start the process?
Yeah, when they deem that they need help?
Right. I mean, there's a lot of great programs out there. There's Matt's program, Elder Services, which is now age span. There's family support. You probably can answer this one better than I can.
Yeah, there's a lot of services in the community. So we were, personal care attendant is a big program that NILP administers. We're one of the many PCA programs within the state. So this is a program where persons who have chronic illnesses, who need physical hands-on care in the home with ADLs, activities of daily living, can hire a aide to help them. It can be someone that's a friend or family member, or it could be someone who is just works as a PCA out there. But the important part is that it's self-directed by the individual. It's not a home health agency coming out to you when they have a staff member available. It can be, you have this many hours, you can set the schedule yourself. So that is a program that really does help a lot of persons stay in the community. If they have an illness, or it could be a lifelong disability or a sudden disability, it's a program that helps a lot of people.
Can I interrupt on that point? One of the, I think I mentioned that we had impetus for this show, which is a staff member at the station asked a question about someone who was facing these decisions. And one of the things that he was saying is that he can't get PCAs. What is the situation right now for getting nursing assistance, getting living assistance?
Unfortunately, right now, there's really a big PCA sort of staffing crisis. I think it's all throughout that human service, health field, but particularly with PCAs, the persons are having very much difficulty finding persons because of the pay rate for personal care attendants in the community. They can sometimes, the persons who would work as PCAs can go and work for agencies and sometimes make more. So that is definitely, Jim, a problem that we're working on. That's one of sort of our system-wide advocacy issues that NALP is sort of involved with right now, and sort of helping either advocate for an increase of wage or sort of making PCA the job more incentivized to join it. So I think those are issues that is definitely that you bring up. It can be tough. Another program that we were actually talking about before the show is the adult foster care program. It's kind of an archaic term, but it's called the AFC generally, where it's sort of almost similar to PCA, but it's someone who might be living with a family member, or just someone who's willing to have a person with a disability live with them, and then they would sort of receive a stipend for having that person live with them. So there's different options available.
What about in your field? Are you experiencing staff problems too?
So in what I'm doing now is just having the staff, the nurse practitioners that are available. Our business has really increased the amount of people who are homebound and need that help. So we're about, in the past 3 years, we're up to 1,000 patients that we see. So trying to get enough nurse practitioners that can go in and see them in the assisted living has been difficult.
So you're looking for NPs
Yes.
as opposed to the...
Yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
when I was working in an assisted living, it was always difficult to try to have, they were called CNAs in the assisted living. So a lot of times we would link up with a school that was having the students there, and we would have them come in and train with us, and we would get a lot that would stay with us. So that was great.
So you mentioned is this something that exists, or is it something that's being advocated for where family members can assume the role?
It exists.
It exists,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, in most programs, it can't be a spouse or a legally responsible family member. So that sometimes comes into play, but it can be most family members.
Yeah, it has to be an
Friends.
adult child. It couldn't be
Right.
someone
Okay.
under the age.
Or a friend.
A friend or a neighbor.
Then with that, you might run into difficulty having a friend do it because they might slack off, you know?
That's definitely, we always talk about it in the PCA program. This is a job for the PCA, so yes, you can hire a friend or family member, but it's your duty as an employer, as a PCA employer, like you would any employee, to follow labor laws, to really make sure your family member or friend who's working, if it is one, that they know that your care is at stake here, and they need to take it seriously.
Now, as someone who's hiring a PCA or working with a person like this, you're not just a customer, you're the employer too. Do you have to train people or get people up on what their responsibilities are as an employer?
Yes, that's typically the role of a skills trainer. In our PCA program, they would go out and work with the individual to sort of teach them all these, because like you said, most persons haven't supervised the staff before. They've only usually had services sort of sent to them. They just might, you'll be available to receive the care. So it is something that they teach them how to do timesheets. They have to teach them how to do employer paperwork, which is, some of it's the typical paperwork that you would fill out when you start a new job somewhere. So these are the challenges that come with the program, because it can be a great thing. It can be something, you have control over your services and your care, but for some persons it can be a challenge that sort of take on that responsibility. But once they get trained, generally it works really well.
So you have a training there, and it's peers, people who have gone through it themselves, so they understand what needs to be done?
Some of our skills trainers could be peers, yeah. I mean, I used to actually work as a PCA skills trainer myself. Yes, I mean, it can be a peer that's teaching the person, but it's definitely someone who's trained on the rules and regulation of the program.
I'm sorry to get you off the track.
That's okay.
There's so much to discuss.
Yeah.
Talk about.
I'm good at doing that, I'm sorry. So we were talking about options counseling, right? So what are the goals of it? What is the goal of getting someone to know their options?
I think always keeping in mind that we're trying to keep the person to be independent as we can, independent as possible, in bringing in services to help them or showing them where they can go for those services. So sometimes it might be bringing in, if they're having trouble with the cooking, they can bring in Meals on Wheels.
Okay.
Or like we've already talked about the PCA, but maybe there's been a fall or their balance is not too steady. You can bring in VNA services, which would be a visiting nurse or a physical therapist, occupational therapist, and they can work with the individual or they can work with the family member, and that family member can help do some of that training. So that helps with the PCAs that also are working with the individual. And then, just knowing where they are in their disease and where they're going to be needing more help. Maybe they need to know this is going to be down the road in 5 years. Start looking now for that planning.
Right.
Both Deb and I live alone. And Deb has at least a child in the area. I don't have any children. So you worry about those kind of issues, what family support.
Right.
Right. And so when is it time? I mean, does the individual make the decision? Yeah, maybe. Or it's more or less the family or a friend?
It's a little bit of everything. Once you know that you're starting to maybe need a little bit more help, or maybe you don't need any help yet, but you're looking down the road. Like you said, there's not a family member around for you. So you might need to check into, even like there's elder law services out there that are free, you know, when what programs are out there. We were talking about Element Care, a PACE program, you know, that helps with the insurance part of it, but also you can go there for a day program, or you can go there for physical therapy or occupational therapy, or even a meal, you know. So there's just trying to figure out what are we going to need down the road.
Right. So another thing for me is thinking about financial costs, you know, preparing and to make sure that I'm taken care of, you know. So that's I would think a real important part that people have to start thinking about.
Right.
Because as Jim and I have said in various shows, that we all age into disability.
Well, if we're lucky, we age into it.
Yeah, right.
We lived long enough to do that.
Right.
What are the typical people you typically see in working in options counseling?
I mean, we work with people who are either at risk of sort of hospitalization, at risk of being administered in a facility, or we can actually work with persons who are sort of already in them or at the point of going in. I think that the goal is to sort of catch the person, you know, at the point that they might be considering the option of going into one or staying home, and educating them on what is out there, because people really, a lot of persons don't know what's out there, and they might assume something. They might assume that there's nothing out in the community that they can get. They might assume that this is their only option, is to go into a facility, and maybe they decide that that is the best choice. But we want them to have the most informed choice available. I see all the time persons who might purchase something that they could get paid for some other way, and they wouldn't have to purchase it, a piece of equipment, a ramp on their home, when there might be programs out there to help them modify their home to stay home. So that's just what we're trying to try to catch them at that point. And it's never too late. Like I said, we work with persons even in facilities who have made that decision to go into one and think, oh, maybe I can get back out and go back into the community. So it's really all types of scenarios.
What should people have prepared before they get into, you know,
This situation.
Money.
Making the money.
No, that's what I was talking about. Well,
It can be expensive, as you were saying. I mean, just a home modification, a ramp can cost $4,000 or $5,000. I drove here myself in an adaptive van with hand controls. To say that's expensive would be an understatement.
Right.
Fortunately, because I worked, there's programs out there that someone told me about that helped me sort of subsidize the cost of that modification. But someone that's not in that situation, that isn't able to work, would have to pay for that out of pocket unless they were able to get some funding. Otherwise, NILP has a program called Title VII Part B, which is funding that is administered through us, that we get, I believe, from the federal government, that can pay for vehicle modifications, home modifications, and adaptive equipment up to a certain amount. Of course, we don't have unlimited amount, but that is something that persons who are consumers of ours could take advantage of. There's also, I always bring up the home modification loan program, which I believe in this area is administered through community teamwork, which someone could get up to $50,000 to modify their own home to make it accessible. And this is a zero interest loan in most cases. so they wouldn't, it's not accruing interest, and they don't have to pay back that loan until they actually sell the property.
Okay.
So it's really a useful tool for an elder or someone who's trying to remain in a home that they own, make it accessible.
And not knowing what to do leads fear to the fear that will cause inaction. So it's it's important for people to know that there are options.
Another option is to tap into the Veteran Association. You know what I mean? I know because they do work. They've provided ramps for people. The veterans have actually come out and did the physical work themselves. So that you must find a lot of that.
Yeah, yeah. There's so much out there. It's just that's what our staff do every day is try to help people connect with these. It might not even be a program that we know about at the time that they come to us, but through our work with them, we find out about it. You know, it could be even contacting the Knights of Columbus or something if it's a child that needs a donation. So we really look for all types of resources.
Which is a chore, I can expect, because having to have looked for people to help with my medical prescription costs, it's very time consuming and it's humbling in a way. So it's good to have a pro help you in that search. So to close out our first half hour, could we give some examples of successful option counseling?
Sure. I mean, I could. A typical successful options counseling might be someone who maybe is aging, as you say, might have been working normally, but became ill, had some kind of illness, disability come upon them. They're not now able to work. The mortgage or rent payments they were usually paying, they're not able to afford anymore. So they're looking at what's going to happen to me. So we could work with that individual, look at their specific case. You know, do they qualify for Mass Health now because they don't have their normal employer insurance? Do they live with others? Do they have informal supports or not? You know, there's another program through Mass Health called Mass Health Common Health, which is sort of a Mass Health with a premium that a lot of people can spend down into if they have a lot of out-of-pocket medical expenses. I bring up Mass Health a lot because it's really opens the door for a lot of these programs like PCA and AFC.
And I think we would love to get into the issue of Mass Health, but we're running out of a little of time for this first show. So I thank you both for all the information you've shared with us so far. I hope that we can continue filming a little bit more, and we want to thank our staff as usual for helping us. Sandy Seglin, our director, Bill McGrow, and Don Sistini, our camera people, who are keeping us going. So thank you again, and if you could join us in giving our thumbs up as we say thank you for watching Yes We Can.
Yes, we can.